Hello, everybody. I'm Sarah Beth Burke. I'm so glad you're here today with us for an episode of Becoming More Than Your Title. I started doing this series because I've met many workers who struggle to explain who they are and what they do in the workforce. Because ultimately, so many of us are more than our job titles, and yet we still use them. But when we're trying to figure out our unique value and how to express what we really do, we need more tools. So I've become a researcher in hybrid professional identity. And that means I study people who are more than one thing. And they're not just multi-hyphenates or multi-talented professionals or generalists, because I hear those terms a lot. A hybrid professional is actually another segment of the workforce we haven't spoken about as much, because they are actually integrating their different identities together and working at the intersection. So this idea of intersectionality is really where hybrids come to life, because they feel more fulfilled and engaged, and they start to do things in the workforce that defy language and titles. And that's why they say, I don't know, I just wear a lot of hats. So I've got a guest today. Her name is Morag Barrett, and she runs the SkyeTeam. We're going to hear all about her hybrid journey and hybrid professional identity, and even just how she talks about professional identity in her own lens, because that's really what I love hearing, are people's stories of how do you make sense of yourself? How do you tell the world what you do and why you do it? Because words are not enough. Job titles are not enough. So here we go. I'm going to bring Morag up. Welcome, Morag.
Hey, Sarah Beth. Great to see you.
Great to see you. I love that you and I have met a little bit before. I've gotten to be on your podcast, and now you're here sharing your story about being more than your title. And the way I love to jump in is starting with, what do you do? How do you answer that question, Morag?
Depends on how mischievous and minxy I'm feeling on the day, because it can be anything from I take the junior high out of the workplace and bring the human in. Or it can be, I'm a facilitator, I'm an executive coach, I am the author of 2 books. There you go. I am the mother of 3 boys, so you can go with the traditional hats. But I'm also a kind of detective. I'm a challenger. I'm a counselor. I'm an inspirer. It really does depend on the moment and the day of the week.
Oh my gosh, that was such a perfect way of expressing an answer to this what do you do question, because it really summarizes this notion that people are changing answers frequently. They look at what audience they're talking to. And I love how you gave us 3 different scenarios, depending how you're feeling, what mood you're in. And the last one caught my attention the most, this challenger and inspirer and detective, because that hits the root of what I love to see is who you are using different professional identity words than just your title. So tell me about why you chose that last sequence of words.
Well, it's interesting because one of the things that's always frustrated me, or I found challenging, it just befuddles me if I take a word that my youngest son used recently, befuddled, is that when somebody says to you, where do you see yourself in 5 years, in a job interview, etc. And certainly in my first career, I was asked that all the time. And my career is now 30 years old. So this is going back to the 90s. And it really just didn't make sense, because the expected answer is a job title. And a job title, to your research, often limits us. So for those who are watching and listening today, they're meeting me for the first time. They've got no idea. There are going to be some assumptions. But right now, I'm pigeonholed as an author. Great. I'm pigeonholed as a keynote speaker. I'm pigeonholed as a leadership development expert. But what people don't see is at high school, I was going to be an engineer. So I studied applied mathematics, physics, and economics. I have a very logical brain, which is the detective piece. I love understanding. I'm nosy. I want to understand how your business works. But at some point, squirrel, I go off on a tangent. So I didn't become an engineer. I went into finance for 15 years. So I also understand what it takes to run a profitable and successful business, and also what can cause a business, however fancy or great the idea, to fail. And that's the human side, which is why I now do leadership and executive development. I'm working with senior leaders around the world to tap into, how do I create a vision that inspires others? How do I ensure alignment across my organization so we're all pulling and running in the same direction? And more importantly, how do we hold ourselves and others accountable for delivering the results that we've articulated in that vision?
Yeah.
And that's where those words come in terms of being a detective to understand what's causing people to hold back. Being a challenger, actually in my head, I was saying I'm a BS caller. But again, where are we misleading ourselves or others in terms of what's getting in the way and our own culpable negligence? And then the rest of it is all about tapping into the unique talents that each of us bring, sometimes the hidden talents beyond the job title, which is why I loved your book and your research.
Oh my God, you are just speaking so much my language without knowing it. I often have people draw a Venn diagram and start to break down what are the parts of you. And people usually start at a superficial level. They're like, I'm the engineer, I'm the teacher, I'm the researcher. But I ask them to go deeper and we investigate, and they come up with these other key identity words they've never used about themselves, which you're naturally doing, which is the challenger or the BS caller or the inspirer. And like those to me are really the words and the identities you're bringing to your work that are so much richer and authentic and meaningful than whatever title you started with. So I'm already so intrigued with how you're thinking about yourself. Morag, have you ever heard about a hybrid professional? Was that new to you, or is that something you'd come across before you met me?
So not explicitly, and that's what I love. It was like it fell into place when I read your book and when we had our conversation. It's what I knew intuitively, but I didn't have a language and framework around it. And even bigger than the where do you see yourself in 5 years' time, the other conversation that really pushes my buttons is the one about work-life balance. Because the implication there is that we are nicely pigeonholed. There is no Venn diagram. You're either living or you're working. And the reality is, no, life is the encompassing bit, of which work is one of the segments. And the question is, what are the other pie elements that are going to cause you to thrive and enjoy the ride and enjoy the experience? So coming back to hybrid is all encompassing. But it allows us to take back control because now I get to choose. I get to choose how I want to show up, which skills I want to tap into, not the job title. I go looking for the job title that will tap into the skills, or I go and look for the social experiences, like ballroom dancing is my thing to do when we're allowed up close to strangers again. But the things that are going to fill the funnel and energize me so that the whole life experience is worth living.
Oh my gosh, I think you could have been my co-author. This is so fun to talk to you. This idea of choice really hit me because I don't think I've heard people say that exactly. I've heard more about giving permission to be these different parts simultaneously. But I love that you're saying you get to choose which parts and which skills you're tapping into to bring out the best side of you, which is who you are when you're the most energized and what you want to be doing. So it sounds like you're in your hybrid state quite often. Does that sound right? Or how do you think about that?
It sounds so easy when you're on a podcast and just saying it. But I would say that my own experience has been hard-won in many ways. So in terms of living and working and on my skills and the skills that make me thrive, absolutely. I am one of those lucky few, or I don't know, who have always enjoyed work, whether it was waitressing in my first job, my banking career and the different roles I had there, to now working with different clients, different industries to, as I say, unlock the people mystery of what does it take to build a high-performing team or a high-performing career. But along that journey, I have certainly not been as embraced. I mean, I'm a British woman. I mean, emotions. There's like, no, stiff upper lip, walk it off. You can do this. And so I shared a podcast and a blog last year that talked about how I'm learning to embrace all of life's richnesses and emotions being one of those, and communicating them and sharing them. And on the other side, what I did do very well, I think a few years ago when I started SkyeTeam, which is now 14 years ago old this month, is
Wow.
defining success for SkyeTeam based on our needs,
Mm.
not on the prescribed book or expectations of others. And that in itself is liberating. And if you go to our website, you'll see of our 8 corporate values, 4 of them are fun, because life is too short. If you're not enjoying the work you're doing or the clients you're working with, then you're doing it wrong. And it's about to get changed. And I'm reaching over here because it was such that our friend Dr. Bob Nelson's just published this book, Work Made Fun Gets Done, and SkyeTeam's featured in there as an example of how do you create a work environment and a team where we can all thrive and play to our strengths. And when you do that, oh my goodness, the impact and the ripple effect we can have is humongous.
Yeah, I got major chills on that one, thinking about a thriving team that's having fun. I'm like, where is that book? I need to start reading it.
All good booksellers.
So you started SkyeTeam, you said about 14 years ago. Was that birthed out of the intersections of your different professional identities? Like, how did that come into fruition?
So it's interesting. I've always known that I wanted to run my own business, because being in the banking industry, and I was advising companies at different stages of their life cycle and lending them millions of pounds back in the UK at that time. And of course, it was like, oh, I'll do this one at some time. But at that point, I was still being very traditional. The product or service was either going to be a tea room or a wedding dress shop, a la say yes to the dress. I had never thought of myself as being the product or the service. But what I was finding was that graduates of my programs were calling and saying, hey, can you come and do this and help my team at my new company? So it was a case of, we'll give it a year, we'll see what happens. And now suddenly 14 years later, we are well into our teenage years.
That's incredible. Well, I love how you kind of listened to your intuition on that and just watched what was coming to you and created a business that served what your customers and clients wanted, because often it's like, I have an idea, I'm going to follow it, and it's not the right fit. And so you're in this business, if I'm hearing this right, about leadership development and HR and teams. And so how do you see hybridity coming into that work, or do you? Does that make sense? So on one hand, it's differentiating yourself. Like, how are you doing this work in a way that other people aren't doing leadership development? And then the other side is, do you see hybridity as part of the way you're coaching or supporting or thinking through solutions with your clients? I know that's a double question.
So we'll start with the work one. So I'm working with a senior leader right now at a high-tech company to define the career paths for success. And this is something that I explored with Dr. Linda Sharkey in my second book, The Future-Proof Workplace, that in the 21st century, I think you've nailed it, hybridity is here to stay. It isn't a case like I was told in the banking career, leave your emotions at the door, it's not personal, it's just business. Well, no, that is not true. The successful businesses, if you look at yesterday, Hubert Joly, the previous CEO at Best Buy, just published his book, The Heart of Business, talking about how we need to connect to purpose and passion and the human side of the organization. And that, to me, is one of the welcome changes, that conversation is happening. That the career progression is not now time served, it is skills and talents brought. And for the companies that aren't paying attention to that, it's short-sighted, because the market is much more visible. Even in a pandemic situation, your talented employees have choice. And so if you're not allowing them to play to their strengths, to tap into those skills and things that they thrive in, they're going to find somewhere else to go. So with that client that I mentioned there, in designing their leadership program, and we're working there at the senior director VP level, we're talking about the concepts of hybridity and understanding and having that conversation with your team members, thinking about your own needs and how do you become a catalyst to inspire and engage across the organization.
I love that. I think this conversation, I've been asked more to direct some of my own research into teams and management and the HR talent world, because it is a question of how do we manage people with multiple talents, multiple identities, nobody's staying in a career for 30, 50 years. There are so many switches, whether it's across industries or just across companies. And realizing that talent comes in wearing different hats and they need to be used for multiple areas of expertise is a new way of managing and hiring. So I love that you're bringing that conversation into the forefront, because it's use it or lose it. Like, these companies are going to stay relevant or they're going to disappear if they don't, I think. How are companies adapting to those conversations? What are they pushing back against, or what are they leaning into?
Well, I'm seeing it slowly
Mhm.
in things like job descriptions, even job postings, how they describe the environment and
Yeah.
work. Thinking about the sense of team, which of course has been hugely impacted as we live in this little 3x5 box at the moment for many people.
Yeah.
And how do we redefine organizational culture, and what does
Yeah.
it mean to be part of this? So it is still in its nascent
Yes.
stage of the conversation, but I'm seeing hope, because we're getting
Mhm.
away from the boring Word documents. We're getting away from the jacket on the back of the chair as an example of your loyalty and commitment to the job, to know it's the enthusiasm, the impact, the results that we're delivering together. And are we fun to work with? Or
Yeah.
when you call, am I rolling my eyes going, oh no, now what does she want? As opposed
Right.
to, oh, now what does she want? And
Yeah.
there is a huge difference between the two.
Yeah.
But when people are tapping into their hybridity, then, as I say, there are ripple effects. And I'm looking at friends. I mean, I'm wearing new earrings today,
Ooh,
made by Elizabeth Morgan, a friend of mine and a
beautiful.
contact on LinkedIn. And so she's just switched her career from HR to social media marketing. She has her own small business on the side making jewelry. There's hybridity for you. And
Exactly.
right from an earlier stage in her career, it took me a few years to find mine.
Yeah, it's a really good point that hybridity doesn't happen overnight. And I love that you're even talking about the clients you work with where this is nascent, they're slowly kind of coming around to it. And I've seen that in my research. People need to first sense, what are my different parts? I can't even articulate that. Most people sound like a laundry list of identities. I'm like, no, 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 no. You are not 20 different things. We need to get it to your core. And so first it's just that awareness of, what are my different parts? And then it's, how do they fit together? What are the relationships between them? Because the betweenness is sort of the magic spot. And you've referenced this a couple times about that idea of fun and fulfillment and purpose. And I've noticed when people are at the intersection, they're in their zone of genius. I also see them in flow. They're so in love with what they're doing, they don't even realize it. They're unconscious and they lose track of time. And I do believe when they find that spot, they're most engaged, they're bringing their most value to the company. It really keeps them feeling like they belong in that team. So getting managers and leaders and everyone to understand, how do we help, colleagues find their spot, their intersection, their zone of genius. Oh my gosh, that's the dream. Like, I would want to work at a company that helps me stay there. Do you have any thoughts or recommendations on what it takes to support a team and individuals to do that?
It comes back to the fundamentals, a conversation to understand what does inspire, engage, and what also drains us.
Yeah.
And I'm working with a leader right now, and we were talking about his career journey, the peaks and valleys. When was he in flow and energized?
Yeah.
And when was he in the doldrums and feeling stuck and resentful and frustrated? And being able to identify the themes, both in terms of the environment, the work that he was doing, what he was bringing of himself to it, allowed us to do what you've just done, which is go from a laundry list, a wish list of things, to a core set. And whether you call them values, that's part of it, but it's also skill set. So it's the head, heart, gut. That's what we're trying to connect all of it.
Sure.
And a simple activity for people listening today is just think about the colleagues that you would jump at the chance to work with again. And what is it about those people that made them special?
Yeah.
And my guess is you might remember how smart they were, but that's one and done. And you might remember their technical competence and ability to problem solve. Maybe that's two and done. But of the 10, 15 things that are going to come to mind, it will be the coaching, the feedback, the challenge. They believed in me. They overcame obstacles. They were eternally optimistic, or they were eternally realistic and stopped us making mistakes. And
I love
either
that.
way, that's where hybridity comes in. It's not what we do, it's also how we do it that matters.
Oh, yeah. You're reminding me, I think it's a Maya Angelou quote about people don't remember what you say, they remember how you make them feel. And that it just tenfold all the time. And I've noticed that, yeah, when you feel your best, you're in your hybridity and you don't realize it. And so making the unconscious conscious is a big part of the work I've had to do with people to stop them in their tracks and go, wait, freeze time. What are you doing in that moment? And most people need a lot of coaching to honestly get very specific and detailed because they start saying things like, well, I was problem solving. I don't know if you ever hear that. And I go, great, we all were, but how were you doing it? What kinds of problems were you solving?
Well, it's interesting because I'm taking my own medicine right now, which means that I am working with a coach, in fact, a group of coaches, to reflect on my own what are called saboteurs, what holds me back. Because unless we're present and reflecting on, well, how come I had such a brilliant day today?
Yeah.
How come we were able to achieve such an amazing result? You're not going to be able to capture that learning and either repeat it or adjust it for that next situation. But on the counterpoint is when you're not in flow, when you are in that valley moment, reflecting on what might be causing that and then what's within my control to change it. And that research comes from Shazad Charmin. I think that's how I pronounce it. Positive Intelligence is his book, and there's a free online assessment. And so I'm going through this multi-week program, and it's just the awareness. It's the daily habit of just thinking, who do I need to be right now? Am I intentional about how I'm showing up? How do others feel in my presence? How do I feel in my own presence? And then did I do my best? And whatever the answers are to those questions, it gives me a rich set of data to either repeat or to adjust and improve my impact, improve my experience tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like an amazing training. What are some of the things you've learned about your saboteurs?
That they're always there like a little voice. And I'm a gold medal procrastinator come avoider. And so knowing that I can still turn it down, it doesn't go away completely. But choosing to do the thing that I've been procrastinating on anyway and just get it done. I'm learning from my colleagues as we share our stories, how judgmental we are of ourselves and say things to ourselves in such a way that you'd never say to your friends out loud, not even think about your friends, but we're harder on ourselves. So again, turning the volume down on that so that what he calls our sages, but what we know, we are all good human beings. We're all just trying to do our best. Well, step into that moment, enjoy the moment, and seize the moment.
Oh, so many good things. I think there's a book called Chatter that's on my book list. And I think it's about this noise in our brains and how to tame it. Because a lot of the work I'm hearing you express, I would say, is metacognition. It's learning how to think about our own thinking or see ourselves and witness ourselves and not just be in it. And so it's sort of that presence, right? Wake up to what you're doing so that you can either change it or minimize it or work through it. Do you have any other tools or recommendations that you've seen leaders need or other talent needs in order to feel their best and to be in more fun in that zone we've been talking about?
Well, I've used one. I'm coaching a tech leader right now, and I asked her to create what I call 5 guiding questions, and shamelessly adopted that from Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, who's one of the #1 coaches. And the idea being 5 questions that at the end of every day, asking herself, how did I do? And so one of those is where might confusion still exist on the team? Where might I need to step in and offer clarity? Who do I need to recognize or say thank you to for a job well done? And the questions, it's just a short list, and it's literally a sticky note that she keeps on her computer monitor as a reminder. And just something as simple as that, 3 to 5 questions, that's all you need. Make that a habit. And then you can add to the questions, change the questions, add a new technique in a few months when you've got that ingrained. But it's baby steps. That's what takes you from bronze medal to silver medal to gold medal.
I love that. I think you're just reminding me these daily habits and practicing, right? It's there is no perfect. It's just constant daily reminders to try and do a little bit better every day. It's kind of that 10% happier motto that's been going around. These are great tricks. Morag, what else are you looking at? Because I love how you bring in your engineer mindset, the analyst, and then the financial background, and now you're in leadership coaching. So I guess maybe my better question is, how do you differentiate yourself? When people come to you, what are you known for, and how have you expressed that to your client base? Because there are so many leadership coaches out there, right?
There are. Well, I think the easiest answer is that everything that we do is lensed through the research from my first book, Cultivate, The Power of Winning Relationships. Because despite what I was told in my banking career, that it's not personal, it's just business, what I've come to realize is that business is personal and relationships matter. It's the biggest team sport that any of us get to participate in, and yet we see politics, silos, and turf wars in most organizations.
Yeah.
And Gallup, even on their engagement data, what question 10, this is the one that's really got me going at the moment, is, do I have a best friend at work?
Oh,
well, I had an epiphany. And so my thought is, well, that's passive. That's me, junior high, going, no, I don't have a best friend at work. They were all mean to me at lunchtime. I'm going to sit and no, I'm not engaged. I'm not happy. So my team and I are currently researching and writing our third book, which turns that question on its head. It's not, do I have a best friend at work? It's, am I a best friend at work?
Oh.
So we move from reactive to proactive.
Yeah, totally.
So in the book, we'll talk about what we call the ally mindset. And in fact, listeners watching this live or on the replay, I'll give you an opportunity to complete our new ally mindset profile.
Great.
But it's, how do I show up at work? How do I, not as a doormat, but as somebody who can, articulate what am I looking for and what do I need, both from this career and this business relationship?
Yeah.
When we can articulate the measures of success and the guardrails, then we are less likely to be disappointed, blindsided, or hesitant to show up as our full selves.
Love it.
And that's what we're doing here. And that's going to transform. And I've seen it transform individual career reputations, teams, and organizational cultures.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I can see this mapping to so much of, I've heard the paradigm design versus default in your career. And I think the default is the autopilot, right? You follow the career trajectory you think you're supposed to. There's a ladder, you're supposed to climb up it. And the truth is everything is non-linear. There is no right, left, up, down. Like you can go many directions in a career. And you design it, your choices, kind of back to that choice element. Are you aware of the choices you're making and why, and what you really need to thrive and feel successful and integrate your identities and so forth? So you can ask for that and pursue it. And you said this many minutes ago, that it doesn't matter what the job title is. Do I know the skills and identities I'm trying to apply and that I need to show up? And I'll figure out how that maps to a job title later.
Indeed. And I've changed my name from Morag Barrett to this URL, which will allow those who are watching and listening to go and test drive, beta test our ally mindset profile. And within that, you'll uncover your 5 archetypes that make for an ally mindset. And it starts with abundance and generosity. Am I willing to share my expertise, or am I hoarding it for my own good? Once you have abundance and generosity, much like you and I, can you connect and show compassion to your colleagues? From there, if you've got that, then you get courage and vulnerability that Dr. Brene Brown has done so much amazing research around. And when you have those first 3, then you get to candor and debate, which means we're having the right conversations at the right time to avoid predictable surprises. And then the 5th element is action and accountability. Do I follow through on what I've said and asked for in terms of how we work together and what we are working on together? So that's going to be the focus of our next book, which will hit the shelves next year.
Amazing. Definitely go to skyeteam.cloud/AMP. That sounds like an amazing tool for your research. Morag, we are wrapping up. So I just wanted to say, do you have any final things you want to share with people regarding, how you figured out your hybridity or what matters to you in being a hybrid professional?
So I would encourage you, and it goes back to what you said earlier with the Dr. Maya Angelou quote, How do you feel in your own presence? When are you in flow and when are you in flux? And ask others, when do they see you at your best? Because from then you can choose, am I being intentional about how and where I show up? And then give yourself grace. Are you doing your best? So those 3 steps, I think, will help us all to be better hybrids, whatever it is that we're doing in the moment, at work, at home, at play, in our lives.
That was perfectly said in a nutshell, this idea of being aware of how you feel, being conscious of the flow and flux, and then making choices, being deliberate. You used intentional. And I think that really maps with what I've seen with finding your true identity and your hybridity is you've got to wake up to it. And then it has to become part of a practice that you're choosing to be in your hybrid space, not letting people tell you how to show up and work. Morag, this has just been a delight. I love your research. You've got so many tricks up your sleeves. Thank you. And where can people find you if they want to follow up?
Well, you can definitely find me at SkyeTeam, SKYE team.com. But having an unusual name, Morag Barrett, you Google me, you'll find me. And please do connect with me on LinkedIn. I promise I respond to all messages. And I'm here. Consider me your ally.
I definitely see you as my ally. And likewise, if people want to learn more about becoming more than your title, please come to morethanmytitle.com or follow me on all the social channels. I really enjoyed this. I wish we could talk longer, Morag, but thank you so much for your time today. We're going to head out.